Implied domain of a function. When we talk about the implied domain of a function, this means that we're looking at what are the values of x at which the function can be evaluated to obtain a real number. So in that case, we don't want any division by zero. Or if we have, say, a radical or an even root is included in the function, then we must exclude the negative numbers from our domain. So let's see if we can look at the exercises on the next slide. So determine the implied domain of each of the following functions. Let's take, for example, letter A. In letter A, f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 3. And then this is only what's under the radical. It's just the expression x minus 3. So it's the square root of x minus 3. And then outside of it, there's an added number plus 2. So what we're concerned, therefore, is this part of the function. So what do we not want to have in under a square root? Since we're talking about real numbers, we don't want this to be negative. So what does that mean? That means you either want it to be 0 or positive. In other words, we want that the domain would be, we have to solve this. So to get the domain, we want to solve x minus 3 should be greater than or equal to 0, or x is greater than or equal to 3 when you add 3 to both sides of this inequality. So if you say x is greater than or equal to 3, what does that translate into an interval notation? It's from 3 on out to infinity. So that's the implied domain. Now, what about letter B? In letter B, you have a function g of x where it's equal to the ratio 2x divided by 6 minus x. So here we have a ratio or a rational expression. So when you have a rational function, your main concern is you don't want to have a division by 0. So what we want is that 6 minus x cannot be 0. In other words, if I add x to both sides, you do not want x to be equal to 6, because look, if I plug in 6 here, 6 minus 6 will be 0. So you're avoiding number 6 on your number line for the values of x. Another way of writing this is that you start from negative infinity up to 6, and you exclude it. That's why it's in parentheses. And then you take the rest of the right side of 6. So from 6 to positive infinity. So this is the implied domain for letter B. Now what about letter C? You have h of x equal to 7x squared minus 8x. When you have 7x squared minus 8x, there's really no restriction, because you can always square any number, any real number. You can always multiply a real number by another constant, and then you can take this sum. So here the domain would be all real numbers.